Welcome back, guys, to yet another World of Warcraft, the War Within video. In preparation for midnight, I wanted to make this video as kind of a follow-up to my previous one that talked about player housing and what I'm doing to prepare and some of the ideas that I have and maybe some copium takes, but don't worry about that. This video is going to be how you can also join the copium takes and do absolutely ridiculously volatile investments. It's not gambling, I swear, it's investments. For midnight, specifically player housing. I wanted to go over kind of like how I decide on what materials that I want and then what I do to buy said things. There's a couple of things that you can do. I'm not running it very safely. You could use something like the Undermine Journal, so you could check historical prices. You can kind of see how prices have been moving around and everything like that. But again, it's up to you and how you want to do it. If you want to be a little bit more safe, I do recommend checking quantities and also checking prices on a lot of different materials. But again, before we kind of get into it, the primary purpose of this video is to get your mindset into what at least I'm doing. If you think this is crazy and you have some better ideas, I'd love to hear about it. But this is the way that I've been doing it. Since we know as a general statement that player housing will include every single expansion available in World of Warcraft, and we will get recipes for every expansion, and then the fact that we will be using materials from every expansion, and they will also be creating some new ones, which we don't know how we're going to get yet, but they're probably going to be farmable. And if that's the case, if they are farmable, some of the other materials are inevitably also going to be farmed more. Again, it's a little hard to tell. There's a lot of unpredictability with this, which is why I keep saying that this is incredibly volatile. It's not gambling, I swear. But this is the way that I've been doing it. So to kind of decide, obviously you could just go onto the auction house, you could click on reagents, and then you could click search, right? Then you filter literally every single material that you could possibly get in the game. I don't really think that this is something that you need to do, because obviously something like grays and straight up trash they're not going to be used, right? It's just not a thing. And then there's also a lot of the vendor materials that you can buy straight off a vendor. Highly unlikely that something like that is going to change too much either, because they have their set prices. So besides that, you want to go for the materials that are used, I would say, a lot in professions. Now, if you didn't see the player housing post, we saw an example for a Brill coffin. Now, that coffin used iron bars, and it used sorrow moss, and then it also used ink, right? So it used, well, I guess the herb and the ink are kind of in the same thing, but it also used a bar. So we don't really know whether, we don't know how these professions are going to be put together in terms of what materials they're going to use. You can kind of guess what's going to make what. Obviously, blacksmithing will be making metal things, things that have a lot to do with metal, like a war chest or something, or a metal table, something like that. But again, if we look at it, what I've been doing so far for the investments that I've been making, and again, I'll talk a little bit more about how I do that. I go into every single expansion, and I'm like, okay, so what materials are used a lot? This is a Naxxramas materials. That's a little hard, but you have something like Essence of Water. And then you can search up Essence of Water in your profession. You can be like, okay, well, what is that used for? This is all Naxxramas stuff. I feel like that's maybe a little unlikely. So we're going to take something that's, I would assume, is a little better. Let's see, what can we choose? This is yeah, we'll take this Mooncloth robe. As you can see right here, Mooncloth is a big use in something like tailoring. It's kind of its own thing, right? Because you have plastic tailoring, and there's obviously, depending on the patterns that you have, there's a decent amount of stuff that actually uses it. You can actually create Mooncloth, which requires a Moonwell, obviously, and that is through Fellcloth. So if you invest into Mooncloth, you're also investing into Fellcloth automatically. Whether you want to actually just straight up buy Mooncloth or you want to use Fellcloth way is kind of up to you. but it is something that's used, and this is something that you have to consider. But just because you can use fell cloth to make mooncloth doesn't mean that that's necessarily going to be a great idea. Because let's just imagine this for a second. If mooncloth gets used for some kind of a decor item that people are going to be using a lot, 657 of this is absolutely nothing. Just if we say it uses one mooncloth, maybe, right? Maybe one mooncloth. That's 657 versions of this decor item. That's absolutely nothing. It'll be thousands and thousands of people that are going to be wanting this. And that's not even counting all the people that will be investing into something like this. So that's also something that you have to keep in mind. And then when you look at the fell cloth, you'd be like, okay, well, there's 2,600 of this right now. Right? That turns out to another 1,300 mooncloth. But again, that's still not a lot. And fell cloth also has its uses across the board in tailoring, and that's something that you also have to consider. And then there's bolts, right? I would assume that bolts are going to be used in some capacity. Now, again, crafted materials are a little bit different when you invest into it, right? Because sometimes you can get some cheap things when it comes to crafted stuff, but you also want to make sure that how you actually craft the thing is not insane amounts cheaper, because if that's the case, you don't want to be overspending on a crafted material and then not buying the material that actually crafts that crafted material, because then you're just going to end up, well, having not only the price potentially tank very quickly, but you could also potentially be making it cheaper if you use the materials to craft the crafted material. But again, it kind of depends on what you're investing in. And tailoring in particular, you have a lot of the bolts, right? It's kind of the same thing if you go for ores, right? Ores turn into bars and ingots and all that. That's also something you have to consider. But again, something that's used like a lot across the board is Essence of Undeath. And again, Essence of Water is also used all over the place. I feel like these essences, and that's also something I talked about, volatiles from Cataclysm and primals from TBC, I feel like those are items that have a pretty good chance of having some pretty good use. And because of that, I feel like they're not that ridiculous to put a little bit of gold into, which is why I've done it. The other part of it is that those materials in particular are actually quite, how should we say it, they're quite safe, because they don't move around in their value too often at the moment, just because they have crafted transmog and collectibles and whatnot that actually keep the price up consistently. So unless they change like major things, it's not like you're going to say, okay, well, I buy this volatile for 20 gold, I buy thousands of them, and then all of a sudden in 6 months or however long, the value is just gone. It's disappeared. It's highly unlikely that it's going to happen. It could, because you never know with Blizzard. They could be making all sorts of decisions to just change everything. But again, it's a little hard to predict something like that. And as I said, this is extremely volatile investing. I swear it's not gambling. But again, something that you also see a couple of times, you see some leather, right? You could invest into leather pieces. There's a lot of different leather. But I would go for stuff that has a lot of uses across the board in the professions that you're looking at, right? If you decide that you want to go for every profession available of the primary professions that are crafting professions, there's going to be a lot of different materials that don't have very many uses. But again, we don't know with Blizzard. We don't know what they're going to do. We could have like a small time item. I don't really know which one that would be. Something like the North Sea Pearl. This item in particular right here. The North Sea Pearl doesn't have that many uses from Northrend, but they could decide that, oh, well, this pearl is going to go in some display piece that you craft in jewel crafting or something, right? You don't know. But again, you can kind of decide, okay, well, how much do I want to invest into this? Do I want to pick the safe items, which is, you know, okay, well, I'm going to decide that I want to go for the very low cost ones, The thing is, when they're very low cost and they're very easy to get, that also means that the prices are probably not going to move much. So the spots where you're actually going to have a chance of really making gold are the ones that do not have a lot of quantity, but still have, I should say, a decent average daily sold. Because if you do something like that, well, it opens up for some opportunities to actually, control a market potentially for a little bit, depending on whether or not it gets more demand. But, me trying to explain this is it's just to get you guys into a mindset of thinking about investing in a very volatile market like this. Because again, it's incredibly hard to predict where this is going to go, right? I could be right on some of these materials, but I could also be extremely wrong on some of these materials. But the way that I'm thinking about it is a lot of the materials that I'm putting gold into have a certain value that they are kind of like ranging around normally. So if you take, as I was talking about earlier, if you take volatile water, this item in particular has been swinging about 20 to 25 gold for years, okay? So if you end up buying some of this to actually, potentially prepare for player housing, and the fact that this is going to get used for something like that and has the potential to increase in value for a little bit, this is something that you wouldn't lose a ton of gold on. The chances or the risk of this tanking to 0 is very small, right? And you also have to consider when you're investing into something like this, you're not just thinking about the demand from the people that are wanting the actual crafted decor items. You also have to think about all the other people that are doing the same thing that you and I are doing, because we're investing into these things, and so will other people. And depending on how much knowledge they have, how much free gold that they have, how much they potentially want to risk, well, it kind of opens up for some opportunities for flipping materials to other investors that are over investing or don't have a good view of how these materials have been moving for a very long time. And I can already tell you right now, from all of my experience with gold making in this game, every single expansion people will come in too late and they will have to pay overpriced values for all of these old expansion materials, because not only when a new expansion comes out does that mean a lot of the people that are farming old stuff, they go to new stuff, which means the quantities go down a little bit and the prices slowly trickle up. And because so many people are focused on the new stuff, it kind of gets forgotten a little bit in the back, because oh, here's the hot thing you can make a bunch of gold on, you should focus on this for a temporary amount of time. It happens every expansion. You can see that from historical data on a lot of these materials as well. But again, I hope this makes sense to you guys, and I'd love to talk about it. It's a very big subject, and it's not something you can just like kind of get right immediately. But I would say that only invest into this if you are completely okay with, I would say, losing almost all of the gold that you invest into it, unless you have a big, crafted transmog operation already set up where you can actually use these materials for something else, because that could lower the risk quite significantly. Another thing that I also recommended in the previous video is, if you guys are interested in this and maybe don't have a lot of gold to be able to do this right now, another thing that I know that people will be doing once the expansion comes out is that they will be leveling every single expansion's version of a profession, right? So if you decide, okay, well, I know that I want to do this, and I know I want to have the opportunity to do player housing decor once it comes out, I recommend leveling these professions in every expansion right now. Because if you don't do it right now, once the expansion rolls around, I can already tell you, people are going to look at what is recommended for leveling professions. So if you go on something that is like WoW professions, right? Let's see, I can pull it up potentially here. The thing about WoW professions is that under each profession, it'll show like a recommended, what do you call it? Like a recommended list of materials that you should buy. Oh, you can't actually see. Can't actually see it. There we go. So we're looking currently at the War Within Enchanting leveling guide 1 to 100. This could be any other expansion. It'll show you a shopping list. Now, what people will do, because they've done this for previous expansions or for certain major patches where we've had something quite extensive for certain something like Nexramas, that was a big deal, and it really hurt some of those materials for a while. These materials on a shopping list like this, since this is a popular site, but this goes for any other site that is a leveling guide and what people tell, you know, viewers and videos and whatever else, these materials are most likely going to get reset around the time that player housing comes around. So you could imagine it like this. Player housing gets announced. A bunch of people invest into it because, oh my god, it's here. I need to be, I need to join up. It's panic investing is what people call it. Is they go in, they look, okay, I need that and that and that and that and that. And they just go in and clean out the whole thing. This happens all the time. Now, the other thing that will happen is then it'll slowly trickle down. It'll go towards the normal. And then when the expansion launches and we actually get access to player housing and we start seeing all of that stuff for real, because there will be a beta period where we'll maybe be able to see some recipes and some costs and whatever else. That'll also move it along quite nicely. But when the expansion actually launches, when people get access to it for real, that's when we know how much demand is going to happen. Now, and I tell you this, if Blizzard puts extremely popular crafted decor items into professions, the amount of people that are going to want to level each and every expansion, every single profession it's a lot of people. Okay, it's a lot of people that are going to want to do this. And you might be like, okay, well, I already have most of them. Okay, yeah, but sure. Say that one person is missing 3 different expansions, and that's where some of the most popular items end up. It's impossible to say. So it's kind of like preparing for what could happen just in case. And the only thing that I would say leveling these professions is going to cost you, it's obviously going to cost you the materials, but this is not a lot of gold we're talking about. Actually leveling a profession it's not insane. It doesn't cost a ridiculous amount of gold, and we still have many, many, many months before player housing comes around. So I would definitely recommend doing this now when there's not a lot of panic investing and crazy amounts of demand and prices adjusting all over the place for this stuff. Because if you wait until the last possible second, you're just going to end up in a situation that's just going to be terrible, and you're going to have to overpay or maybe potentially even be forced to wait until the prices come back down again. If they do, because again, it's a very unpredictable environment. We don't really know. So again, if you want to do crafted decor and professions, pick up the professions that you want and level the profession up to its max in whatever expansion that you are interested in. I recommend doing it in every single one that's available. And again, if you want to invest, this is another thing that I actually forgot to say. If you look at each expansion, this is obviously the War Within, but you could look at any of the other expansions. You should be able to actually do it on this site. If I remember correctly. Pretty sure I do. Here we go. So down here, you can see that every profession has every expansion. So if I just click on vanilla blacksmithing, you'll see a full list of items that go into leveling blacksmithing. Now, obviously, this can vary. It also depends on where you get your information from. A lot of people use WoW Professions, and it's recommended by a lot of content creators as well. So if you see a list like this and you're last minute, people are going to go in and buy all the materials that they need for this stuff. You see, you actually need 230 iron bars or something like that. 210. Like, you need a lot of materials for something like classic blacksmithing. And a lot of these items are very highly used materials in the professions. There's a good chance that a lot of this will be used in player decor, like player housing decor. And if the price on that is absolutely ridiculous and you're out late, well, you're going to be paying more. Now, from an investing standpoint, if you buy into these materials at its lowest price, which is obviously hard to tell depending on when you watch this video, you could potentially have these materials ready for when people start doing the panic investing. Now, not all of these are going to work out, and obviously some of these are ridiculously cheap, so taking a chance on something like that is not really going to matter. But if you look at something like silver bars, that's a little bit higher, iron bars, that's a little bit higher, and then maybe rugged leather, maybe a little bit higher. But, you know, all these solid stone, rough stone, coarse stone, it's not a lot of stuff. But because it's so cheap to reset an entire market like that, being able to control it even for an hour or two has the potential to make you quite insane amounts of profit. So it's just something to consider. But that's pretty much everything that I had for this video. I know it's another yapping session. I hope it actually made sense as for what's important and what could kind of be interesting to think about. Again, if you guys are interested in just, you know, leaving your own thoughts, or maybe you have some questions for me for any of this stuff, make sure you leave that down in the comments below. Another thing, make sure that you guys check out Gold Capped, and also there's the paid version, of course. You guys can use Sansiful as your code. There's also the affiliate link down in the description below, 10% off, which is great if you are considering something like that. On Goldcap, we have a bunch of guides for all versions of WoW, also upcoming for MOP Classic. Now, the other thing that I want to say is that we're obviously, when Midnight rolls around, when a lot of this player housing comes around, we will also be doing a bunch of guides on there. So if you want to be, you know, ahead of the curve, potentially that is a place where you could get info like that. Or if you just want to support me, that's also an opportunity for you. But again, thank you guys so much for watching the video, and I'll see you on the next one.